morning, everybody. It's Tom Christie back in the carving shop, and welcome to session 2 of carving a Drake Blue-Winged Teal Preening decoy. And in session 1, we shaped up the head, we got the body bandsawed out. In session 2 today, we'll start refining the bill details. And if we get to it, start rough shaping the body. Because on these preening positions, I like to kind of get the head and body ready to go and then play with some angles and see how I want to set the head into the body depending on the position that I'm looking for. And there are lots of alternatives with this head shape, so we're going to want to explore that and come up with a pleasing composition for this preener. If you're enjoying my channel and getting value out of it, please consider hitting the subscribe button. That does help me out. It doesn't cost anything, doesn't commit you to anything, but it is a show of support for the channel that I put together, and I would appreciate that. So let's get busy on the day 2 of the Blue-Winged Teal. Just a quick note, as I was carving the bill, I got a little aggressive on shaping up the bill and actually put a little concave in this side of the bill. So I went back with some epoxy sculpt, 2-part epoxy, smoothed that in to build that back a bit. And in case you see that as I continue the carving, I just wanted to explain I needed to make a little repair there. One of the beauties of working on decoys and smoothies as opposed to decorative birds, you can do those kind of repairs, and I don't have to burn that area or texture that area. So no harm, no foul. So we're back to the full width that I'm looking for, and now I'm going to start defining the notch area here. Do a little layout work first. I've got a measurement with my dividers from the tip of the bill to the point of the notch here, and I've transferred that onto the carving. And then I got a width of 3/8 of an inch. So going from the center line, I've marked the location of the notch. That's really important to set this distance from the get-go. Too short a bill looks too stubby, too long looks very awkward. So you really need to nail that. If you don't have a study bill, I recommend you get one for the decoy you're carving, and then over time you can kind of spread that investment out, and you end up with a box of study bills over time for just about any species that I'm going to carve. I've got a study bill that I can refer to. You may not be able to do that or want to make that kind of investment. I get that. Then just use your reference and your pattern and go from the pattern and kind of establish where that should be. So let's define that notch. We've already defined where the bill meets the face, and then we'll do some layout work here down below. But first, let's get this defined. Okay, I'm going to speed the video up, and I'm using a little cylindrical ruby bit. And that ruby bit has grit on the end of it as well, so you can use it like this, almost like an end mill, to remove wood. So it's taking wood off at the end and the side of the bit, and I like that. So I'm just going back and forth and defining that notch, leaving the notch itself raised where the crown hits the bill, and taking the bill down on either side just a bit. And I'm carving a little bit of a return in there so you can see the shape there. And then I'm blending each of those areas so that there's softness there and roundness. I like to repencil things to keep my eye on the shapes as they're evolving. I think it's a good idea. Okay, I've got that shaped up. Now I want to take my dividers and get that point where the upper and lower mandible meet in the corner. Transfer that to the wood on both sides. And then I'm going to remove a little wood on both sides. And I'm using that same cylindrical bit to just push that. You maintain the width of the bill as it goes back into the face, but we need a little extra length in that area where the upper and lower mandible meet to be accurate. And then I can use that same bit to kind of blend in around the bill in both directions. So I'm removing a little wood so that I don't have a hard shelf there, but a nice soft transition. Same thing here, removing that wood so there's not a hard shelf there. Just checking that dimension again and making sure I've taken off enough wood. Looks like I need to take a little more out on this side, so I'm going to pull that back a little farther. If we don't do that, you're going to end up with a wacky looking bill, one shorter on one side than the other. So I'm a big believer in using the dividers to keep symmetry. Now I'm going to look at my study bill and look at the shape of that lower edge of the upper mandible. And it's very characteristic on a blue-winged teal. There's a little bit of a lobe out near the end of the bill, and a little bit of an upturn smile look in the corner where the upper and lower mandible meets. So I've got that penciled in, and now we're going to use a knife. All right, now I'm going to use the knife to follow my guidelines here. Put that little down curl in the corner, and then I'm going to take a couple passes at this just to deepen that. Do the same thing on the opposite side. Make sure you can see what I'm doing. Right there is my mark. It's a slight, very slight upturn and then down to this lobe area. It's very characteristic on blue wing. This side is open, so I can go ahead and use my knife to make a cut down here, and then go underneath about a 1/16 of an inch in, and once again just carefully score and go deeper each time so that you maintain control, and remove that little area. That looks good. Over here I can't get an angle at that, so I'm going to have to come up with another way and probably use grinding equipment to relieve that area so that we have a little offset in the lower mandible to match this side. I'm going to smooth that out, and then I'm going to take that lower mandible up a bit and create the V down underneath. Okay, to remove that material on the lower mandible, I'm using this little cylindrical shape ruby bit and using it like an end mill to basically go in a vertical position like this and remove material using the end of the bit. I didn't do myself any favors here with this two-part epoxy. The epoxy sculpt is very hard, tough material, so it's harder to carve. It holds in there well. It's strong. I won't have to worry about that, but it does not grind as quickly as the Tupelo would. So just another reminder to take time, Tom Christie, and avoid rework like we're having to do here. It'll be okay. There you can see I've removed material from both sides. I'm going to change bits here, going with that cone-shaped or bullet-shaped ruby bit and just blending now that I've done some of the carving down there. Just cleaning things up in the corner there where the upper and lower mandible meet and blending that into the face. Same thing on the opposite side. I'll just speed this section up a little bit so you can see the finishing work. Then I'm going to work on that lower mandible and do a little cutback. I'm going to give myself a guideline here. That area is too thick the way it is, and I need to thin that up. This is definitely a detail, but this will help form the V-notch under the bill, and it also gives us a little bit of a return under the lower mandible to indicate some feathers down there versus just the bill going flat into the head of the decoy. Hopefully you can see that. It's a very subtle thing, but a nice little detail. And then I'm rounding that area. Right there is, we'll do that on the opposite side as well. Little tight quarters here, but I think I can get the knife in there. Especially this nice thin blade knife. All right, that looks better. Now I'm going to speed the video up because we're going to move into the detailing of the bill. And I'm using this little triangular shaped ruby bit to put a little bit of offset right above the where the lower mandible or where the upper mandible edge is. So I'm creating a little bit of a shelf along the upper mandible lower edge there. You can see it there. I'm going to do that on both sides. Just use that ruby bit to begin smoothing things out. And then I'll do some hand sanding to remove the grind marks. Now I want to work on the, I'm using this little cylindrical ruby bit, and I'm going to use that to define the nail. And I do that by starting just cutting a groove. Same with the edges of the tip of the bill on both sides, cutting a groove and then smoothing that out in both directions to create a little bit of a ridge there on each side of the tip of the bill. And now I'm rounding the nail and rounding the areas around the grooves that I've cut in there. So we'll go through this bill detail kind of quickly because my other videos have shown very similar approaches. But it never hurts to see the details by species either. If you're working on a blue wing, this way you have the entire carving video right here, and you don't have to jump back and forth between species to look at a section on detailing a bill. And then I'm going to do some hand sanding. There's a lot of hand sanding on the bill, so I'll get that done. All right, now I've penciled in this line right along the edge of the upper mandible. And I'm going to use the knife to very carefully score that lightly, so I don't have a ton of pressure on the knife. I just want to create a guideline for my grinding tool. I'm going to let that fade out up there. Same thing on this side, and then we'll grind in there a bit to highlight that edge of the upper mandible. I'm going to use a very small diameter ruby bit and just run that along the knife score that we put to create a little bit of a groove there. Don't have to go very deep on this, just enough to catch a shadow, and then round up into the upper portion of the bill and also round down. Then I fold up a piece of very fine sandpaper and use the corner of that to get in that ridge and smooth things out so that we have a nice soft and round ridge there that looks natural. And then I'll use that very fine sandpaper to do some more smoothing of the entire bill and get ready to do the nostril details. Okay, I've used my calipers, the pattern, and the study bill and marked in where the nostril enclosures are. Kind of looked at the shape of those. So I've got those located, and there's my center line, so I want to keep that in mind so we're symmetrical around that center line. And then I'm going to use that same small ruby or diamond bit to carve around those nostril enclosures and begin to relieve wood around them so that they're raised somewhat. All right, this section of video I'm going to speed up as we do the bill details, just so you can see what I'm doing, but take less time doing it. So I'm using the little cylindrical ruby bit and outlining the enclosures of the nostrils. And then once I get those outlined with a groove, then I'm going to start working the material down on the upper and lower side of those nostril enclosures so that they remain raised a little bit. I've switched to this flame-shaped ruby bit, and that lends itself well to this removing material around the nostril enclosures. With that point of the ruby flame, you can really get in there and do some definition around those nostril enclosures. And then the rounded side also lends itself to, just keeping a nice rounded shape around the bill in that area. So I'm going to work that for a while, but basically I'm going back and forth to soften everything and leave those nostril enclosures raised up. And then we'll move to a little, well, here I'm just penciling those in. I've said that before. I like to repencil as I go to look at the shape of those enclosures. Are they level from the front? And then I'm going to do a lot of sanding. Now I've got the nostrils themselves located based on my pattern, and use the dividers to get them in the right location so they're symmetrical. And now I'm using a little tiny ball ruby bit to go in and open up the nostrils. This is very meticulous work. It's easy to make a slip, so just maintain control. And then I'll do some finish sanding. Here I'm penciling in the nostrils to see if I've got symmetry, and it looks like I need to add a little length to one of the nostrils so that they look symmetrical. So I'm going back in and opening that one up a little bit more so that it both match well. A little finish sanding, and I think that looks good. Got the bill sanded, and now I just want to use the embossing tool. Put a few little bill wrinkles in. Not overdo it, just an indication kind of coming off the nostril area going forward here and fanning out a little bit. A few wrinkles coming off the nail, kind of radially. Just one final detail on the bill. The underside of the bill, I want to put just a few details down here. Not to go overboard, but I've got those penciled in, and then I'm going to use this little ruby bit, cylindrical bit, to carve a few details in there that will complement the paint. This is where a study bill helps too, just to see the structure under the bill. It's hard to find good pictures of the underside of bills for color and structure, so a study bill really helps in that regard. So I'll quickly go through this since this is not a critical detail. It just adds a little to this underside, since that bill is going to be visible in this preening position. Got the bill details done, and there'll be some minor sanding on that later to just smooth everything up. Now I want to dial in the width between the eyes and create these grooves. You can see from the front, if I set those eyes right the way they are here, they would be way too wide, too far apart. So off of my pattern, I'm using my calipers to get a width between the front of the eyes at the front, and you can see I've got quite a bit of wood to remove to get to that dimension. That's a critical dimension. You see a lot of people get the eyes set way too wide or way too narrow, and it's part of getting the look right, getting those set at the right dimension. So we'll do some carving to create grooves on either side, blend that into the cheek and crown, and keep working that until I get to that dimension that I'm looking for from the front. Okay, I'm going to speed this up. I'm using that bullet-shaped ruby bit, and it's going to take a while to get these to the proper depth. So I'll just show you a piece of this video so it doesn't get too long, but I'm basically carving a groove and then going up and down to blend that into the cheek, and then up to blend into the crown. And it's important to keep symmetry so that we don't have one side very deep and one side shallow. So just keep checking your work as you go. Now I'm going to skip forward on this so that we can kind of see the finished product here. do a final check with the calipers and they're sliding back into position, so that's good. That's where I want to be. Now I want to put some cheek details on the bird. I think it just adds some character, and I'm going to use this bullet-shaped ruby bit to cut a groove again, and then blend that in both directions so that it's nice and soft. I just wanted to throw a little bit of shadow, and in this kind of head cocked around position, some of those feathers tend to bunch up a little bit. So I think it adds some realism to the carving as well. And this is at 2 times speed, by the way. Now I'm going to change to that smaller flame bit so that I can get down in this area and cut that groove a little deeper as it goes under and into the neck. And that flame bit allows me to get down in those tight spots and then blend that as we go. So you can see it throws a little bit of a shadow there on both sides. I think by adding those kind of details, it really adds some realism and animation to the carving. You can see how the head is tucked down tight on this side. So now I'm going to do some hand sanding. All right, I've got the head sanded and shaped up. And now I want to insert the eyes. I use my dividers to get a dimension from the tip of the bill here where it meets the face back to the front of the eye. Transfer that to the wood on both sides. I normally drill a through hole, a small through hole as a guideline. I did not do that on this head because of the preening shape. So that'll lock in that dimension. I just have to pay attention to the up and down dimension with no guideline and make sure I don't get the eye too low or high on the face. I'm just going to eyeball my pattern to accomplish that. I've got an eye template here, or a circle template, to help me draw a circle where I want to insert the eye. I'm going to do that on both sides and then take a look from the front to see if I think I'm close on the up and down. Okay, I've got that in. Looking from the front, they look pretty even. Just want to do a quick gut check on the distance from the top of the head to the top of the eye. Okay, that looks pretty good. And I'm going to use a small 1/4 inch gouge and carefully go around the circle that I've drawn with the eye template, or the circle template. I keep calling it an eye template. Just make sure if you do it this way, you maintain a firm grip on the head so it doesn't get out of control when you gouge your hand. This piece is a little tough. You'll notice grain inconsistencies in Tupelo, and there'll be hard spots, soft spots. There just happens to be a hard spot right there. I'll do the other eye in similar fashion, and then we'll set the eyes. Hey, just a quick word on the quality of eyes as we're getting ready to set these eyes. I'm going to be using Michael Braun eyes for this particular bird. Michael is a carver and has been making eyes for a while now. And I used to get all my eyes from Tohican. They've kind of quit making eyes. The thing I liked about the Tohican eyes was the aspherical shape, which is kind of this shape if you're looking at the eye from the side, a little conical in the middle, and that really, and the way they would set the pupil in there, I really like the way they look, especially from the front of the decoy. They project well. Well, Michael just said he's going to make a series of these shaped eyes. His eyes are shaped more like this today, but he has a new line coming out with the aspherical eyes that I'm excited about trying, and I want to try those. These particular eyes are this shape, but they're very high quality, and they're gonna do a great job on this decoy. All right, I'm gonna use Epoxy Sculpt to set the eyes. It's a water-based 2-part putty, and I like working with it. It's got a long working time, so these will have to set overnight. I like the fact that you can use water with it. So I'm going to start with an old paintbrush and just put water in the eye socket and around it to promote bonding to the wood. And I'm just going to squeeze some in the eye socket, and I'm going to crowd the front of the hole that I've created because that's where my dimension was from the bill that I want to maintain for accuracy. I'm going to press this in, and I look from the front. You don't want to press it in so far that the eye disappears from the front, and you don't want it to be too bug-eyed. So it's just kind of a judgment thing. That looks about right. And try to put a little forward cant to the eye and downward, because the bird is going to look right along that eye channel as it's feeding. I realize this bird is not going to be feeding, but I like to pretend. Now I'm just using some of the Epoxy Sculpt and kind of crowding it around the eye and trying to blend it into the surrounding wood. And then I'm going to use my finger and the water and just go back and forth and smooth that into place. And if we do a good job with this, there'd be very little sanding that needs to be done after the fact. I really like the way this Epoxy Sculpt blends into the surrounding wood and bonds to the wood. Okay, that's a good starting point. Now I'm going to use an old brush, an old scrubber that has been retired from the paint shop, and it's a good tool to use to kind of begin sculpting. Moving this around, I'm dipping it in water so that it kind of slides through the material and doesn't pull it off. I want to keep that eye channel in good shape. And I'm just going to spend some time getting a nice almond shape to the eye, making sure I've got depth to the eye channel here so that, again, from the front, the eye is visible, but not bugging out. The nice thing about the Epoxy Sculpt, too, is after it cures, you can go back and do a little sculpting to finish the shape of the eye if need be. So this is pretty boring to watch, but I wanted to show enough just to give you a feel for how I'm shaping the eye up. Now I'll go ahead and set both eyes, and I want to do a quick check on the dimension here, and that looks good, because you can slide the eye forward and back a little bit, and I want to make sure when it's set that I'm in the proper position that I want to be in. All right, I'll be back after I finish the other eye. Just a quick shot after the eye installation, and just looks good from the front. And I'll let that dry overnight or cure, and then come in and do some final shaping, a little bit of sanding. The head will be done. Can start working on the body next. All right, everybody, that seems like a good place to stop session 2. I don't want these videos to get too long and lose the audience. And I like to break them up into kind of natural segments that make sense as you're carving. So we've got the head shaped up, all the build details, the eyes mounted. We'll let that rest overnight and cure. We'll do a little bit of sanding on the head to finish things up tomorrow, and then start work on carving the body. And until next time, this is Tom Christie signing out. Good carving to all of you. Have fun out there.